Tried to march across the Brooklyn Bridge Saturday. Their demonstration quickly turned into one of the largest arrests of nonviolent protesters in U.S. history. Democracy Now!'s Ryan Devereaux was on the bridge as protesters first encountered police. This is the report he called in. You have to listen closely. Democracy Now!'s Ryan Devereaux calling in a report from the Occupy Wall Street protest on the Brooklyn Bridge. Ultimately, more than 700 people were arrested by the New York Police Department. Some protesters claim police lured them onto oncoming traffic on the bridge's roadway. Others said they did not hear instructions from police telling them to use the pedestrian walkway. One of the participants in the demonstration, who gave his name as Aaron G., told Democracy Now! What he saw happen.
What happened yesterday is we were marching, as you know, and a group of people were funneled by the police off into the road. So there were police up in front of us, and we were marching. So as we were going down, we were assuming that the police were clearing the path for us to march. So they were like clearing the road, and they were up in front of us. So we were following them, and then all of a sudden they cut off about like 700 of us, and then they cut it off. And then once as we were walking, we stopped, and the police were in front of us, and they blockaded us. And then they blockaded us from the back. And they were telling the front to turn around and go back, and they were telling the back to turn around and go frontward. So they were like, people were getting squished in the middle because no one knew what to do. And then eventually they brought out these orange nets, and they circled us, and they just did a mass arrest on the bridge.
Occupy Wall Street movement, now entering its 17th day, draws inspiration from the Arab Spring. According to its website, the protest consists of, quote, people of many colors, genders, political persuasions. The one thing we all have in common is that we are the 99% that will no longer tolerate the greed and corruption of the 1%, end quote. The encampment received a boost last week when one of New York City's largest unions, the Transit Workers Union, announced its backing. Labor unions in the city plan a solidarity march with Occupy Wall Street this Wednesday. Meanwhile, most of the 700 people arrested Saturday have since been released, but were given citations for disorderly conduct and a criminal court summons. Similar occupation protests have spread to other cities, including Chicago, Boston, Los Angeles, where hundreds of protesters are now camped out in front of City Hall.
I'm participating in Occupy LA, staying to camp here at the City Hall in Los Angeles overnight and probably until Monday. It's time that the top 1% is accountable for their actions.
Wall Street and the corporations believe that they have everybody fooled, and it's very obvious, as you can see, is how many people are here, how many people are all over the United States as well as all over the country, all over the world. We're not blind, and we know.
To start by talking about what happened on Saturday.
Sure. So we left Liberty Plaza and then headed down towards City Hall and made our way over the Brooklyn Bridge.
And why were you, Marissa, protesting over the Brooklyn Bridge? Why was that important to you, and how was it decided?
Well, our direct action group had been meeting throughout the week, and they decided to go over the bridge because we wanted to connect the boroughs, really, because we've been mainly in the financial district, and we wanted to show that, you know, the crisis is really affecting boroughs like Brooklyn.
So you started over the bridge.
We started over the bridge, and initially the police seemed to be okay with letting us onto the street. There didn't seem to be a lot of presence, and people just started flooding into the street and taking the bridge. And later on, of course, we were penned in. The cops surrounded us from both sides, from the Manhattan side and the Brooklyn side, with nets, the orange nets that they like to use, that they used in the RNC protests. And people were quickly kettled, but very nonviolent. No one really, resisted the situation
And when you
at
say
all.
kettled, that's a common term now. Explain what that means.
It means we were encircled by these
Enwrapped
nets.
you were wrapped in the
We were
netting.
wrapped in the nets, so there was no way that we could move, and we were also on the bridge, so it was just a very difficult situation.
Can you talk about this issue of people who came, since there was more than 1,000 people later, feeling like the police were ushering them onto the bridge, not knowing they were in violation of some order?
Yeah, there were lots of testimonials to that effect. I personally saw the police allow us on at the front of the march, and then I fell back into the middle once we were kettled. So yeah, I think that's definitely true. They allowed
we are
us
all
on.
one, and it is our governments that work against us to keep everyone down, and that's how the 1% gets away with it, is by dividing us up and people not realizing we're all one, and that's what this movement's about.
Other occupations against Wall Street have popped up in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Boston, and numerous other cities.